sometimes there are two different dishes, very different, that you'll love. And you wonder, is there any way to bring those together? Well, today I'm gonna try. We're gonna be making some Birria Beef Dip Sandwiches, taking Birria Tacos, especially the consommé, the liquid, and marrying it with a traditional sort of beef dip sandwich, French dip sandwich. We're gonna start by making that very beefy consommé, and there are a couple steps involved in this, so let's get started. So I have 6 dried chilies here. I've got 3 guajillos and 3 anchos. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut these open, get the seeds out. And it's best to do this on some sort of plate or tray because it can get messy. You can see the seeds just coming out there, but we wanna cut it open. And I do find a kitchen scissors works really well for this. Just sort of get all those seeds out of there. If a couple seeds slip through, it's not gonna be the end of the world. And I just wanna take this and sort of rip it into some pieces, just like that, and move on to the rest of our chilies. Let's do one of the anchos. Very dry, it's almost shattery. Just wanna see if we can just break. And when they're this dry and brittle, you wanna make sure you get all the little pieces that come off. So really what you're looking for are pieces like that. Fortunately, the seeds mostly just fall out in these dried chilies. They don't take a lot of extra work. Remember, get all those little bits like that. You can see what I mean by a mess. If you just have this out straight on a cutting board, you're gonna be sweeping up little seeds for days. Ask me how I know that. All right, there we go. Let's head over to the stove. I have my pot here on the stove and I'm gonna add my chilies. I've got 3 Roma tomatoes that have been quartered, 5 whole garlic cloves, got 1/4 of a red onion that's been roughly chopped, a cinnamon stick, and a bay leaf. And I'm gonna add enough water to this to cover these ingredients. Got our heat going at medium-high. We're gonna bring that to a boil, then we'll reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. Okay, we're at a boil here. We're gonna reduce the heat, come down to a simmer. Give it a good stir here. As I mentioned, we're gonna let that simmer for 15 minutes. All right, we've been simmering for 15 minutes. It's time to add some seasonings. We're gonna start with a teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of dried oregano, a teaspoon of a coarsely ground black pepper, a teaspoon of kosher salt, and half a teaspoon of dried cumin. Give this a stir. And we're gonna let that simmer for 10 minutes. All right, we've been simmering for another 10 minutes here. It is time to turn the heat off and move this off the heat. I'm gonna let it cool down for probably about 10 minutes. Then we will separate the solids from the liquids, get our cinnamon stick and bay leaf out of here, and get it into the blender. So I have a wire mesh strainer in my bowl here, and we're just gonna pour the contents of the pot in here to separate the solids from that tasty liquid. And I wanna get our cinnamon stick and our bay leaf out of here. So let me fish those out. Here's our cinnamon stick. There's our bay leaf. All right, our solids are gonna go into a blender with about 2 cups of this reserved liquid, and we're gonna blend this until it's nice and smooth. I'm gonna add 2 cups of our liquid. It's looking good. I'm gonna get a little taste to see if we need to adjust for salt and pepper. Ooh, does need a little salt. I'm gonna give it a nice big pinch. Just gonna give this a quick little mix here to get that salt incorporated, and then we're gonna move on to getting our meat ready. So the meat portion of this birria consommé is about a 3-pound chuck roast here. And all we're gonna do is break this down into chunks, season it up, and then we're gonna head over to the stove, sear it in a cast iron Dutch oven, and add the rest of our ingredients. Now, you can simmer this for several hours, I'm actually going to slow roast it in the oven in the Dutch oven. So let's just break this down into chunks. There's no real specific size we need. At the end of the day, we want this to be super tender in the Dutch oven. Good marbling on that. I usually buy chuck roasts when they're on sale and then vacuum seal them and freeze them. In fact, this one's been vacuum sealed and frozen for about 3 months. Now this big part of sort of membraney fat right here, I'm just gonna remove. We aren't gonna need that. Same thing on this piece right here. We'll just get rid of that big sort of membrane fat part. It's pretty tough. Now I do wanna season this up a little bit before we get to the Dutch oven. So we get into a bowl here. We're just gonna hit this with some salt and pepper. All right, let's head over to the stove. All right, so I have a medium-high flame for my Dutch oven here, and I'm gonna add some olive oil. There's a couple tablespoons. And what we're gonna do is we're going to brown these pieces. Want to get some good color on the outside, then we'll add a quarter of a red onion. We used a quarter of a red onion earlier. This is kind of a whole half red onion that we've cut in half. Half of a half. Not worried about crowding the pan because everybody's gonna stay in there. And we're not cooking this all the way through. We just wanna get some color on it and build some flavor in the bottom of our Dutch oven. Wanna get our red onion in here and stir this around. Now we're gonna add that birria sauce we made that we blended. And if there's not enough to cover the meat, we'll add some beef broth. Turn my heat down there. Now I'm gonna add maybe a cup, maybe 2 of beef broth. All right, at this point, your oven should be preheated to 275 degrees. This is gonna go in there with the lid on, and we're gonna check it in about 3 hours to see how the liquid level is. If the liquid level has dropped too much, we don't want that meat exposed too much, we'll add a little more. We'll also check for tenderness because we want this to be pull apart tender. If it's done in 3 hours, perfect. Might take another hour though. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover this and get it into the oven. All right, here is our beef birria mixture. Let's take a look, see how we're doing tenderness-wise. That color is always what gets me with this, that nice redness to it. And in fact, what we're gonna be doing when this is over is I'm gonna skim the fat off the top here, some of the fat, and we're gonna use that to brush onto a bun and toast it up. Similar to how you dredge the tortillas in the birria sauce and then fry them up to get that nice sort of red color. We're gonna do something similar to the bun for this. But let's see how our meat's doing after 3 hours. You know, it's pulling apart, but there's still a little bit of resistance there. I want this to be more tender than that, but there's no law saying we can't take a taste. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's getting close. And what I'm gonna do now is I am gonna pull some of this apart for the last hour here, just so we start that tenderizing shredding process. So I'm just gonna get in here with forks and pull some of these bigger chunks apart, just so we can help everybody along. All right, I'm gonna get the lid back on, get this back in the oven. We'll go for another hour and then I'm pretty sure we'll be done. I can say that I'm happy with that. It smells amazing here right now. Take a little look at this beef, how tender it is. Yeah, that is shredding nicely now. Falling apart on its own, you can just see that there. So I'm gonna go ahead and skim a little bit of the fat off the top of this, and as I mentioned, I'm gonna brush that onto a bun that I've got a tolera roll. I'm gonna toast that up, that'll be the bun for this, and then we will move on to building our Birria Beef Dip Sandwich. So here is my bottom bun that I just toasted up. And over here, I have some of the consommé, and I removed the beef that was shredded and just kind of pulled it apart a little bit more because we're gonna top our roast beef with that. But first, we need to dip this roast beef just like you would with a French dip. And it's just sliced roast beef that I got at the deli. Easy way to do this. I'll slide this over so you can see it. Might get a little messy, but that's what the fun is here. Get in here, dip it in our consommé, get it on our bun. And this is really about using as much as you want. I'm gonna pile this high, go ahead. Oh, this looks good. And then we're gonna top this with some of our birria beef, this nice shredded beef. And then we crown it. And there it is, the Birria Beef Dip. This thing is literally oozing with flavor, so I'm gonna dive in. I'm actually gonna mess my cutting board up and cut this in half. With all that consommé in there, this is gonna be a drippy sandwich, but that's okay. So let's just dive in so we can use some napkins. Here we go. That's pretty amazing. Wow. I mean, I hope you can see this dripping. This is just amazing. The marriage of birria and beef dip, this is just fantastic.